Lyle and Erik Menendez have been dreaming about this day for decades, thinking about it for years, planning for it for months, and it is finally here. It was a big day. Both brothers were resentenced just a couple hours ago from life in prison without parole to 50 years to life. And the change is a big deal because it makes them eligible for parole under California's youthful offender law since they committed their crime when they were under the age of 26. It is their best chance yet for being released after serving 35 years in prison for murdering their parents. Now, today's hearing was expected to last 2 days, but the judge made his decision after hearing from the brothers' family, a retired judge, a former inmate who served time with Lyle and Erik, and the brothers themselves. Prosecutors who oppose resentencing, they didn't call any witnesses. I'm joined now by one of the brothers' attorneys and a familiar face on this program, Alexandra Kazarian. Alexandra, thank you for being with us. So what happens next now? I think a lot of people were expecting the brothers to just walk out today.
That would have been fun. I would have brought them right here with me. Well, yeah. I guess probably we wouldn't have come here because this is my office. We'd be coming to you live from somewhere fun, right? Yeah. No, we've got a hearing coming up on June 13th. We'll see what happens there. It may be converted into a parole hearing. We'll see. I'm not exactly sure what is going to happen on that day, but we've got a hearing scheduled for the 13th. So let's see. Fingers crossed. You know, this was the first step in a long journey, but it was great. I guess it wasn't the first step, but it was one step in a long journey, and we're on our way. It's really exciting.
So, Alexandra, it's a parole board from what I've read, and also the governor who will now make the final decision. Is there any indication, I'm sure you guys have done research with this parole board, how they're feeling, which way they're leaning? Like, do we have any clue of what they might be thinking?
I'm not inside anybody on the parole board's head, but I can tell you if Erik and Lyle Menendez are not suitable for parole, then nobody is. I mean, they are literally today. I know you guys didn't have cameras in the courtroom, but Mark Garagos was telling the court that when you read the law of resentencing, it reads like the Menendez brothers case. It looks like somebody took the Menendez brothers and wrote a law that should apply just specifically to them. So they are suitable for parole. I can tell you that right now. They are ready to be paroled, and it's just a matter of getting to that hearing.
Yeah, and you mentioned cameras were not allowed in the hearing today, which is why we can't see it or hear it for ourselves. But the brothers did speak. What's a little bit of what they said, and how are they feeling tonight? I imagine this has got to be emotional for them.
Yeah, their statements, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Everybody was crying. They both did what they've been doing for years, which was expressing real, sincere remorse for their actions, talking about how they understand what they did and how devastating it was to their entire family. They thank their families for all the support that they've given them. And it was just very, very deep, very moving, very personal statements about the insight that they have into their crime and about the rehabilitation that they've gone through in this last 35 years.
Were you surprised that the prosecution didn't call any witnesses? Because I was just thinking, I mean, they've had these big press conferences and made such a big deal about this entire thing, and then to not even call a witness, was that unexpected?
No, it was not unexpected. I knew what was happening. Mark knew what was happening. Our entire team knew what was happening. I think that they were hoping, honestly, that we wouldn't get to this point because they knew that there wasn't a single witness that they could call. There was not one single witness that would ever get on the stand and testify that Erik and Lyle Menendez are not suitable for parole, that they don't have insight, that they've done anything untoward. I mean, their biggest argument is that they had a cell phone in jail. I can promise you that if I went to jail or prison in the 90s, and now, in the era of TikTok and Instagram, if somebody gave me a cell phone and told me that I could have access to that kind of world, do you think that anybody in their right mind would say, oh, no, sorry, no, thank you? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that they really have been arguing this entire time that Erik and Lyle Menendez are likely to commit a super strike because they possessed a cell phone in jail. There's no witness that they had that could come in and testify to their arguments that they were making. And, I think that the DAs that were in court were told that they had to argue certain things, and they tried their best to do it. But no, I was not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've done a lot of story. A lot of inmates have cell phones in prison. I think in jail. I think a lot of people would be surprised. There's a whole thing that goes on where they get the cell phones in through the guards and stuff. So that didn't really surprise me. But listen, regardless of how people feel about this case, you guys have worked hard, and this is a huge win for you. So congratulations to the legal team. Alexandra Kazarian, appreciate you coming on tonight, and we'll be watching very closely at the parole hearing to see if you guys are able to cross the finish line here.
Thank you. We will we'll be happy to update you.
Let's talk about how you know them. Describe the dynamic between the two brothers in prison. You said that Erik was the weaker of the two. You've said that in the past. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. I was locked up with them in the LA County Jail back in 1993, and we were both in solitary together. We were actually on the tier where O.J. Simpson eventually came in, and they were right next to me. They were cellmates. So I spoke to them just about every day for 11 months. For about 2 months, Erik was there, and then there was an alleged escape attempt, or they were talking about escapes. And they moved Erik out of that tier, and they separated the brothers. So it was just me and Lyle for, the rest of that time. And like I said, it was about 11 months. So I got to know them fairly well, and I mean, the dynamic between the two of them, they were very close, no doubt about it. Lyle was the older of the two. He seemed to be, more in control. He was the one that, spoke up most of the time. Erik was more to himself. I noticed that. And Erik was more troubled. He would speak about things. He asked my advice about certain things, as Lyle did, because they were in trial during that time, too, the first trial that they had that ended in a hung jury. So, they asked me questions, but I think, they had Leslie Abramson was their lawyer at the time. And I think she probably told them, be careful, if you discuss any of the case with other people on the tier. But we got very close. And I will tell you this, Laura, I believe 100% that they were abused. There's no question about it. Lyle especially opened up to me about, incidents that he had in a way. And, he talked about his mother, got tears in his eyes when he talked about his mother. But he had a vengeance for his dad. He really did. Like there was some deep, dark stuff going on there with his father.
Well, what did he say? Tell us what he said to you to have you say that.
Well, he said my father was mean. He was very demanding. He didn't spare the rod. He would get physical with me all the time. And he said, Michael, he would go like this. He was abusive. He was very abusive. And it started when I was young. And the way he said it, I got the feeling, because, I didn't want to ask him, and get into him. But I knew there was more than just getting beat. There was something more to that. And then when he said it, a lot of times his eyes, he would tear up. And honestly, too, I said, Lyle, listen, I came from the street, but that was a pretty brutal thing you did. He said, I was just scared. I was scared of my mom and dad. And I even asked him, I said, didn't your mom protect you? And he said, no, she didn't protect me. And so, he opened up in that way. So again, 100% I believe that they were abused and molested. And I think it's coming out now. I heard that there was a letter that Erik had written well before this incident when he was younger that talked about the abuse. And of course, we're seeing other things that are coming out now about that with other people involved.
Right. Well, that letter, of course, is a very big part of this push to get resentenced. We're going to see what happens later next month. I got to ask you, how were the brothers treated by other prisoners? I mean, were you guys friends? It sounds like you guys started a rapport. I mean, the fact that they told you so much, or that Lyle did, and Erik talking about what they had been through, it sounds like you were friends. But how did other people treat them?
Well, it was funny. I mean, they weren't around any other inmates because we were locked down in that unit. But when we would go for a visit, when you're in solitary, you're shackled and handcuffed. So you have to walk through the rest of the jail. We walked through the jail hospital and everything. And a lot of guys were unkind to them. Hey, you parent killers, we're going to get you, and so on and so forth. So they weren't, they were kind of abusive. But I'll tell you what happened. After they moved Eric out, myself and Lyle would go down to the visits, and he got a lot of visits, you know, not only from his attorneys, but from relatives and friends. And I had a lot of visits also. And so I was young then. I was in my late 30s, and we were both white guys in a jail that's mostly, you know, minorities. And when we started walking together, they thought I was one of the Menendez brothers, and they were saying, "We're going to kill you both." And,
Oh boy.
you know, they were kind of coming at me. So it was funny. I told the correctional officer, and I told Lyle, I said, "Hey, I have enough trouble being Michael Francis. I don't need to be a Menendez brother. So please don't walk us together."
Right.
You know, and they didn't after that. But, you know, I think that was, I don't think they had trouble, you know, after that, because the jails are a little different than the prisons.
Right.
But that was the initial reaction
But
to them.
do you think that they were treated that way because of their wealth? I mean, certainly the crime, of course, was so jarring, but do you think their wealth played into that too?
I do. I mean, look, these two boys were very unsophisticated. I mean, they certainly did the wrong thing after the fact, you know. I mean, obviously they weren't criminals in that degree, you know, until this thing happened. They weren't criminals. They weren't street kids. So they did the wrong thing. I mean, they kind of, you know, flaunted their wealth around, and I think that obviously that wasn't a smart thing to do.
I'm joined now by Tamara Goodall. She's a cousin of Lyle and Eric's who has been fighting for their freedom for years now. Boy, this is really nice of you to be on the show, because I know that you've had a hell of a day, a very long day in court. I don't even know how you made it to the live shot, but I really appreciate it. Give me your reaction to the decision from the judge today.
Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm really, really, really glad about today's decision. And first of all, I just want to make clear, I was not in court today. I did not go in hopes that we would be there next week, and so my superstition held out. So I'm very, very thankful of that. And you know, honestly, my family owes so much right now to Mark Garagos, Alex Kazarian, Cliff Gardner, and Mike Romano, because they have just fought so hard and so feverishly for Erik and Lyle. And honestly, just something that my grandmother Joan has been fighting for so long, and that just has been just today's decision is just remarkable. And I can't even tell you or put into words the elation my family has felt today. Although we want to celebrate, we're not celebrating yet, because this is not the end of the road.
Well, it's baby steps for sure, but this seems like a big, big baby step. And you don't have to put into words, Tamara, because I can hear it in your voice. I can hear that you're super emotional tonight. Even though you weren't in court all day, I know you were getting the updates. Have you been able to tell Erik and Lyle? Did anybody get on the phone with them? Did they know?
Well, so they were in the courtroom via video feed today, so they are aware of the outcome of the decision. And I had been messaging with them up until even this morning with Erik. So I have not heard from them yet this evening. I feel like they've been super busy, especially Erik with Tammy and Lyle with Rebecca. So I know that they are really busy preparing for next week, as they have been for the last year and a half, honestly, between the requirements that they've needed to get completed for a parole board review. So it's exciting. I'm just really, really looking forward to talking with both of them. It's just hearing their voices is going to be really exciting.
You know, it's funny. I didn't expect a decision today, and that way I didn't expect that Erik and Lyle would have been in the courtroom all the way through to a decision, especially since they are actually in jail, and it was a virtual thing. So thank you for clearing that up, that they got to sit through everything right up to decision. I wanted to ask you a little bit about Nathan Hochman's presentation. I did not know, and I don't know if you knew or if the defense attorneys knew, that the DA was going to do some relitigating today with actual evidence and crime scene pictures. And I know it's been all over the news for 30 years. I know that these aren't new to you, but they can't be easy. This is Kitty. and José's blood. This is their crime scene.
Yep.
How'd you withstand that stuff coming back out again today?
Quite honestly, when I heard that those images were brought out again, it was quite angering. It's so, like Garrigo said, it's just inappropriate. And that's honestly from the DA's team. They haven't really made an actual legal argument about why this motion should be withdrawn. So for them to just go up there and basically make resentencing arguments, again, it was inappropriate. And I think for me personally, it's just a huge disappointment of a team of elected officials who are there, who are supposedly supposed to be representing victims. And while we are multidimensional victims in this, my family are victims. And for them to bring that out to rehash what happened in 1989 was in no way necessary.
Well, I am sorry that you've gone through this. At the same time, I'm very happy for you and your family. Obviously, this is great news for you. And like I said, I could hear it in your voice. It's really, it's fresh and it's still very strong. Yeah. I hope you'll talk to us when we get a little bit more resolution next week. It's a big hearing next week. Good luck to you and the family getting through the weekend and the next few days. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for doing this, Tamara.
Thanks, Ashley. Have a good night.
You too. I want to bring in the person that Tamara was just talking about, Alexandra Kazarian. She was in court today as part of the Menendez legal team. I can see that smile. I know what that means, but I want you to put it into words.
Oh, well, I love Tamara. She's so wonderful. She's so smart. The entire family is so smart. And, you know, it's telling that she knows more about the laws of resentencing than the DAs seem to today. It was very, very disheartening. The entire hearing that we had, the amount of law that was argued, we could have been done in an hour and a half, but it took 7 hours because Nathan Hochman made a directive to his DAs that he wanted to relitigate the case. And it was absolutely shocking and horrific. And Mark called it out in real time when they put those crime scene photos up, because that has absolutely nothing to do, first of all, with resentencing. And second of all, nothing to do with what we were there for today. Today was a great day. It was absolutely a victory, but it did not have to take that long. But the DAs refused to argue the actual law, which is if one DA invites the court to resentence, can a new DA come in and withdraw that invitation? And they can in circumstances where you find out that the C file wasn't complete at the time that the DA made that invitation. So there's actually rule violations that are very serious that show that this person actually is likely to reoffend or likely to be a violent person. Violence is the issue currently, not what they did back then. And it would be so much more intellectually honest if Nathan Hochman just came on your show and said, listen, I don't believe in resentencing. I don't think that anybody who's ever been convicted and sentenced to life should get out, because that is the theory that they are proceeding under. That is the argument that they're proceeding under. And Nathan Hochman is representing people in his office who believe that the Menendez brothers should never be free because they worked on that conviction. He's not representing the victims, who are people like Tamara.
Well, in his defense, I will say, because he's not here right now, I will say that he's also representing, you know, it's a kind of a half and half thing, right? If you look at the polling, those who support the brothers getting out and those who support the brothers staying in, at least I saw the latest documentary on TMZ, it was pretty close. You know, it's not completely one-sided. I see you not shaking your head. Why's that?
Because he represents the victims. He doesn't represent the general public. This is not mob law. This is not mob rule.
Okay, but I will say, DAs also represent us, the public, and they keep us safe and they lock people away to keep us safe. So in a way, he represents the victims and he represents the rest of us. So, but to that point, Let me read what he said. He said, these murders were calculated, premeditated, cold-blooded killings. Our position remains clear until the Menendez brothers finally come clean with all their lies of self-defense and suborning and attempting suborn perjury. They are not rehabilitated and pose an unreasonable risk of danger to public safety. And in the vein that he presented a lot of that bloody evidence, which is very painful, obviously, for the family, is it not also, Alexandra, a reminder to the public, it's not all about a Netflix documentary. These crimes were horrible, and these people died terrible, terrible deaths at the hands of these brothers.
Nobody's arguing that that didn't happen. Nobody's arguing that they're not responsible for it. They have never said that we didn't kill our parents. That's not the point. That's not the point of the law that we are arguing now. Today, the only issue was, is there room in the law for the DA to withdraw the case, to withdraw the recommendation or the invitation to resentence? It's a very, very small argument. There's a very, very small universe of facts for them to pull from, and they couldn't do it. They could not focus on that. And Judge Jessic over and over again today said, this is irrelevant. This is for resentencing. This is an argument for after I make this ruling. Tell me how you have the authority. And they can't, because the only thing that Nathan Hoffman's office focuses on is the gruesomeness of the crime. So just admit that you don't believe anyone that commits a gruesome crime should ever be resentenced. Just say that.
So I got 10 seconds left, but I got to get you on this. Now that Nathan Hoffman will not be standing up in the courtroom next week to fight this case of resentencing, and effectively it will just be the defense attorneys fighting for a resentencing, does this make it a lot easier next week for a resentencing or even a reduced conviction?
Oh, they're still going to fight against it. They will be there and they will fight against it. And maybe Nathan will too.
No matter whether this was pulled or not, he can still stand up and he can still fight.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. Just one more legal question, too. Might the judge make the decision actually on the day next week? And if the judge says, you know what, I'm pulling this down from murder to manslaughter, those doors open up in that prison that day?
It could be. Yeah. That's actually, that could be in the cards. And that's what we're hoping for.
Can I book you on that day? Regardless, no matter what?
You got me, Ashley. Anytime you need me.
Bring your clients. I'm just saying. Alexandra, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to bring in Alan Abrahamson. He is a former staff writer for the Los Angeles Times. And the reason I want to talk to Alan is because he covered this case from the beginning. He's also a law professor now, not working for the LA Times anymore. But you have very strident and strong opinions about this case, and I think they're valid and they should be heard. Your reaction, first of all, to the decision today, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, on one piece of what Alexandra had to say, I totally agree. The issue today was whether the DA's office could withdraw the motion that the prior DA filed, and I totally agree with the judge's decision. Aside from that, we can move forward with a lot of different things that I would take issue with her and what Tamara said as well. So let's have at it, Ashley.
So let's have at it. And well, I'll probably end up being, opposing you just to sort of challenge your thoughts here, as I try to do with my guests. But what about the notion, Alan, that these men have served 36 years now, have stellar records. They've done everything that we want the prison system to do. They have succeeded in what we have laid out as the reason for prison in the first place: rehabilitation, do good acts, do good works, do good deeds. And under the laws, they do meet the standards. Tell me why you disagree with the notion that the jail door shouldn't open.
Well, because they were sentenced to life in prison without parole. And to do otherwise makes a mockery of what the jury decided back in the 90s. Also, the thing that gets lost in all of this is a discussion about Kitty Menendez. No matter what you think about Jose, the brothers shotgunned their mother to death, and for no reason that anyone has been able to identify. And for 30 some odd years, I've had the image of her in my head. And the very bad fact, the very, very, very bad fact of this case is that after bursting into the den, going crazy with their shotguns, shooting their father to death. Lyle Menendez went back out to the car, reloaded, came back in and put the shotgun barrel up against his mother's cheek and pulled the trigger. That's why they were convicted. And that's what the jury decided. And that's what they're sentenced for. And, you know, it's not, to your point about the prison system is designed to rehabilitate people. It's designed to keep them away from society. It's designed to deter other people. It's designed to punish them, you know, not just to rehabilitate people. That's like for a drug crime. You know, you get sentenced to jail for a drug crime. We want to rehabilitate you, not for capital murder.
You know, you're right about that. I'm going to hitch up on one point there. I only have a minute here. And that is to keep me safe from the Menendez brothers if I'm out on the sidewalk. Do you think that they are a danger to other people right now?
Yeah, I don't know, but who wants to take that political risk? You know, I mean, I think it's a legitimate decision. We have a system in place here. The jury decided back in the 90s that these two were guilty of killing their parents. You know, a sentence was imposed. For us now, 30 years later, to go back and try to change that, to go back and say, oh, things are different, when in fact, nothing is different, makes a mockery of the entire system. And that is fundamentally wrong about we here in California and we in the United States of America do. The jury system speaks and we should respect that decision.
I am out of time, but I could sit in your law classes day after day. I'd be your most keen student in the front row. Alan Abrahamson, thank you very much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Listen, I've interviewed DA Hochman about this. He says he denies he's biased against Erik and Lyle Menendez. And he says he just simply wants Erik and Lyle to publicly admit to lying about how they planned the crime. He wants them to come clean with what he says are their lies. Let's take I think do we have that soundbite, control room? Let's play that so you can respond.
Okay. Until they come clean, fully clean, with the full breadth of their lies, deceit, and their denials, they are not in a position to be trusted, to be fully rehabilitated, and continue to pose a risk to society of public safety.
So if that's his position, and he's made that position twice now on my show, and he's said so publicly in a press conference, why don't Erik and Lyle just come out and issue a statement saying, yes, we did in fact lie about these parts of the crime, about it being premeditated. You know, we admit to all these things that we lied about, you know, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, during the trial.
At this point, when we look at his list, his checklist, as he calls it, all of those details were actually discussed during the second trial. And honestly, as a family, one of the points that he has made repeatedly is that he wants Erik and Lyle to apologize to us as a family and come clean with what they have done. And I have to tell you, they have apologized to all of us multiple times, have said, you know, we want to sit down with you. We want to answer your questions. They are willing to talk to us about it. They've never once denied or tried to scapegoat what actions they took. They have absolutely said, this is what we did. This is why we did it. Should there have been another outlet? Yes. At the same point, I don't know what else Hochman wants, because with the things that he has asked of them to do on behalf of us, the victims, they have done. And they have.
I think he's talking more, not what he might have said, the brothers, Erik and Lyle, have said to you privately, but I think he wants to make a public statement because he did lie to police for many, many months. They staged an elaborate, scene at the murder scene. To make it look like a mob hit, and and lied about how they discovered their parents' bodies. I think that's, what he's looking for. Bottom line, Tamara, Erik and Lyle, I mean, I remember doing this story. We were like, oh, they might be free for Thanksgiving or Christmas of last year. Things have definitely changed. Are they, yes. When you speak to them, to Erik and Lyle, is hope waning for you and for them that they will eventually get out?
Hope is not waning. It's just becoming further off into the distance. I will say, Erik and Lyle both are actually pillars of strength for us. Ironically, they keep telling us, don't get discouraged. This is just a part of the process. This has been their experience for 35 years, so they know what it's like. But at the same point, all of these amazing accomplishments that they have achieved over the past 35 years, they have done so to improve prison for other people and without the thought that they were ever going to see outside of the prison walls.
Well, Tamara Goodall, stay in touch. We will keep following the story as it develops. I know that you're fighting hard for a cause you believe in, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Allison Treisel is an attorney, a legal analyst for NewsNation affiliate KTLA in Los Angeles, and former high school classmate of Erik Menendez. It's nice to have you back, Allison. Thanks for being on.
Thank you. I mean, a lot has changed, Ashley, in the time that we spoke. I mean, this is...
Has it ever?
No, I can tell you Erik and Lyle aren't going to be home for Thanksgiving and probably not Christmas either.
Well, I wondered that. Obviously, the pathways that involve the district attorney and the judge, those clearly, have a bit of a hamstring here. But what about the clemency? I mean, there's still an opportunity for Governor Newsom to declare clemency for these guys, which means they would walk out almost immediately.
Yeah, and Governor Newsom has granted 186 pardons since he's been in office in 2019, but most of those he has sent them to the parole board for further review, and sometimes the parole board sits on that for 6 months to a year. So it's not a direct path to freedom. And here, although this new DA, who is a very reasonable person and wants to do the right thing, there's no way he's going to be ready. He gets into office on December 2nd. The hearing is set for the 11th. He has no access yet to the files nor to any of their prison records. There's no way he's going to be able or willing to proceed on December 11th. Since the last time we spoke, a judge has, in fact, been appointed to the case. This is somebody that I know very well. He is extremely thorough and fair. He's one of LA's best Superior Court judges, and he takes his time too. So the question is, can Hochman say, I'm just going to withdraw the request? He can, but he only can do it for a legitimate reason. There was a case that was decided about a year ago on a similar issue, and the court basically said, look, we can't have you change a sentencing request just on the change of the political winds. So Hochman's going to be in an odd position because this is going to be one of the most highly scrutinized cases for his first immediate, attempt at office. And is he going to say, I agree they should be resentenced, or is he going to take a more hardline approach, which is what he's basically promised the people in Los Angeles?
Allison Treisel, I'm going to keep you on speed dial because I keep thinking there's a possibility Gavin Newsom might do something. I keep thinking that judge who is not afraid of ruffling feathers might do something. So we'll have to reconvene. And I think you're right, though. I think Thanksgiving is a little ambitious. But thank you for this.
Of course.
If there was still any doubt where the District Attorney of Los Angeles stood on the question of Lyle and Erik Menendez getting out of prison, tonight there's a whole lot less of that doubt. DA Nathan Hochman just announced his opposition today to one of the pathways to freedom for those two men, a resentencing, which is a process that would make them eligible for parole almost immediately. The DA basically said the brothers have told too many lies and not enough admissions over the years about what they did before, during, and after their parents' murders. But the DA did leave the door open, a little teeny tiny crack, by suggesting that if Erik and Lyle come clean on 16 specific quote-unquote lies he says they told, then his office might consider that resentencing bid once again. Family members of Erik and Lyle, who are also family members of Kitty and José Menendez, the victims, they were quick to criticize the DA for the position that he's taking. And I'm pleased to welcome Lyle and Erik's cousins, Tamara Goodall and Anna Maria Baralt. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm sorry this is such a tough day for you. Like these tsunamis of news have to be really hard for you to process. Anna Maria, let me start with you. The accusation is that the DA says Erik and Lyle have told 20 lies and only accounted for 4 of them, which leaves 16 lies uncorrected. And if only they would cop to these lies about the situation around that crime, then he would reconsider the resentencing. Tell me where you stand on that, and if that's a path forward or a non-starter.
Ashley, first of all, thank you for having us on today. I really appreciate you allowing our voices to be heard alongside of his. And the very first thing I want to do is correct an urban legend that he keeps repeating, which is that Lyle and Erik kneecapped José and Kitty. That did not happen. That is not the case. If you look at the crime scene photos, you'll see a wound on José's thigh. Both kneecaps are intact. So I'm not sure where he got that from, why he keeps repeating it. But just first off, that is not true. So the second thing I want to say is that it was made very clear to us when we met with the past administration's resentencing team that resentencing was about rehabilitation and life post-conviction. So this constant replaying of the original crime and this laundry list of quote unquote lies that were addressed during cross-examination, I'm not sure why he thinks this is relevant. I really don't. That is not how it's explained to us. Those are questions, remorse, accountability, those are questions for the parole board. They are not for this. This is about rehabilitation and where the victim's family stands.
So I always think about the technical legalities of, these 3 pathways are all different. And they're still all in play, even though 2 of them are not looking as good. And that second one, which, was sort of dashed last week or the week before, was the habeas corpus petition for a brand new trial. That would be based on the original trial, the original defense, and the maintenance of the fact that they said it was self-defense. The DA says it wasn't self-defense because you've got to be in imminent danger. So is it necessary for Lyle and Erik to technically maintain that defense until that habeas thing is out and gone? In order to keep that second path alive, meaning they can't. They couldn't possibly do, even if they wanted to, they couldn't possibly admit to these 16 things because it will dash pathway number 2. Does that sound, I'm not sure if I'm being as good as I should be, but take a stab at that if you would, Tamara, and tell me if that's something that hamstrings the boys' attempts to even come into, satisfaction with the DA on the 16 requirements.
First of all, thank you. As Anna Maria said, I really appreciate you giving us a voice. I'm really filled with emotion today, especially after Hockman's earlier press conference. So with all of that said, I'm just so disheartened by all of the same regurgitation of all of the same points from 1989 through 1996. Like, there is nothing new that he has said, and truly what this is evident of, at least in my mind, is that he is so focused on the past and he has not demonstrated any understanding of what their activities and their work has been since they have been incarcerated. As far as the habeas is concerned, we did not know of the letter until well after the conviction, and Roy Rosello wasn't about to come out and say anything in 1996. He was not in a place to do that. So we have those 2 pieces of evidence now, which allows, in what has been explained to me, now I'm not a lawyer of any sort, but has been explained to me that this is applicable. Both pieces are applicable. And when Andy wrote that letter or Andy received that letter, come on, you're 13, you're putting it away. And like Anna Maria has said previously, you're picking up the phone at that point. You're not, do you think at 13 you really understand, especially in 1989, what the implications of that, something of that magnitude is going to be? So, with that, I'm really disheartened at a lack of understanding, and the fact that Hochman feels this need to keep comparing this case to Sirhan. They are just different. They are on different levels altogether. So, I mean, enough with that. Truly, it's Erik and Lyle have their own case, and it has nothing to do. It's not comparing apples to apples.
It's definitely different, that's for sure. I mean, Sirhan did not even know the man that he was shooting, and he attempted to kill 5 other people, and they were unknown to him as well. I would be concerned about releasing someone who was that, unconnected to his victims. There seems to be a real connection, clearly, between Lyle and Erik and José and Kitty, obviously. Let me ask you this, Anna Maria. Uncle Milton, that's Kitty's brother, died recently, which was the last holdout to supporting the release. So now there is not one family member who is alive who supports keeping Lyle and Erik in prison, which is huge, right? It is very unusual to have victims' family members all in support of releasing the killers. It's almost unheard of. Do you feel as though that has fallen on deaf ears? And I ask that mostly because I see just recently, I think even just today, you have filed a complaint with the Attorney General about the DA and said this is a Marsy's Law violation. The news conference today, we weren't informed of it as victims, and we have the right to be informed. We feel we've been, I think you said he's been hostile, Nathan Hochman, and patronizing and aggressive. Where does this go from here? Are you finished having conversations with the DA as the victims' family members? Because he's technically your lawyers, right? And our lawyers too. Is that done? Is that, is that chasm unclosable?
Well, apparently, since he did not notify us ahead of time before he went and did this press conference, that is a violation of Marsy's Law. From what I understand, it was actually Tamara, who's with me today, who was the name on the complaint about the meeting that we had. As far as Milton is concerned, he was the last family member who was going to be actively fighting against the release of Lyle and Erik. And I think that should say something. It begs the question of whom exactly is District Attorney Hochman serving? Listen, the streets of Los Angeles are not safer tonight because Lyle and Erik Menendez are behind bars. That is a ridiculous thing to say. So for him to stand up and say that they're too dangerous because they haven't copped to lies that they told when they were very young and terrified about the consequences of their actions, which they have apologized up and down, left and right to everybody for, who is he serving? They're not a danger. The victim's family, that's us. We're here today talking to you about how we want them out. He's not serving us. I don't understand. It is only his personal self-interest that he is serving right now, and that has been made clear.
Okay, well, we are not finished our conversation. Obviously, there's still one more pathway, and who knows what'll happen even if this March 20th hearing happens, because it's the court, it's not the DA that decides this. So Tamara Goodell and Anna Maria Baralt, thank you so much for tonight. Breaking news tonight in the Menendez brothers case, California Governor Gavin Newsom has announced that Lyle and Erik will be appearing before the Parole Board of California on June 13th. The governor made the announcement just hours ago on his iHeartRadio podcast.
On June 13th, both Lyle and Erik Menendez independently will have their final hearing. A report then will be submitted to me on the 13th of June for consideration. We will submit that report to the judge for the resentencing, and that will weigh into our independent analysis of whether or not to move forward with the clemency application to support a commutation of this case.
The good news for the Menendez brothers, who were left reeling yesterday after the LA District Attorney Nathan Hochman announced that he was pulling the support of the DA's office for that much hoped for resentencing. Hochman said he wasn't even going to consider backing their sentencing or their resentencing unless they came clean about 16 things he called their unacknowledged lies. He said those lies include saying that the killings were self-defense, saying that their father drugged and raped a friend of theirs, saying that they didn't plan their alibi ahead of time, and saying that Erik's therapist blackmailed them into confessing. And what does Team Menendez say? The brothers' lead attorney, Mark Garagos, says, and I quote, every single one of those things that Hochman mentioned was either abandoned or was cross-examined in the first trial. This gentleman, this DA, re-traumatizes the family repeatedly. He's almost serially abusing them with his litany of lies. One of the brothers' cousins sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney's Office asking that the DA be removed from the case, saying that he was, quote, hostile, dismissive, and patronizing to the family during 2 meetings that they had back in January. Today, our Brian Enton got an exclusive interview with the acting U.S. attorney for the Central District of California. And Brian asked whether he considered the family's request. Take a look.
The Menendez family sent a letter to your office saying that their victims' rights have been violated and asking you to look into the DA. Is that something that you plan to do?
I'm not going to comment on that. You know, I'm not familiar enough with the facts of the facts and circumstances there. But anytime we receive something from the public, we'll look at it. What I will say that generally, crime victim rights, the federal statute applies to federal criminal cases, but we'll obviously review anything that we get from members of the public.
I'm joined now by Alexandra Kazarian, member of Lyle and Erik's defense team and senior trial attorney at Garagos and Garagos. Oh, boy, do I have a lot to ask you. Let me just start with the way the governor laid out this hearing that both of the boys, now men, have with the parole board. I thought it meant the track for governor's clemency, but he mentioned the resentencing. So can you set it straight? What does this mean? What does this hearing that Lyle and Erik will both have separately mean for 2 of the tracks that they're on towards freedom?
Sure. So I think that the governor's trying to take a new approach with clemency. I think he's trying to create his own path that hasn't really been forged before. And it seems like he's using Erik and Lyle to forge that path. What he has ordered is a public risk assessment. And so he wants to know, he wants to look inside of their brains, basically. He wants to look at their history. He wants to look at the people that they are right now, which is exactly what resentencing is about. Resentencing is about, are you different than the person that you were when you were convicted? Have you spent enough time in custody to actually be rehabilitated? And are you a risk to the public if you're released? So what he has ordered is a risk assessment, and it's a very involved process that is going to take into account how the family feels and how they have been rehabilitated, all of their efforts since then, all of the things that it is very, very obvious that Nathan Hochman has absolutely no interest in. Nathan Hochman has made it very clear that he is interested in keeping the conviction in place. He and the people that he is representing, who are the district attorneys who were involved in the first trial, are very, very interested in retribution and in punishment. And the governor, in stepping in, has said, hold on, nobody's paying attention to the rehabilitation, so I am going to do that. And then the judge can take that report and can assess that.
So that's what I want to know. When I was listening to the governor, he said, you know, this will happen on June 13th, and the day after I get the report back. And I thought, wow, that's fast. And then he said, and I will submit it to the judge for resentencing. I thought the governor was going to say, and I will make my decision on clemency. So the judge has to make the decision if there'll be a resentencing. The governor has to make a decision if he's just going to give all out clemency. So where are we with that? Like, could clemency happen on June 14th? Or if the 13th report is good, which I assume it will be, the parole board's going to be a good hearing. They've been great in prison. What happens exactly with the governor on June 14th?
I mean, that's up to the governor, and we'll find out. Now, we do have the resentencing here still set for the 20th and the 21st. It hasn't been taken off calendar yet. So we could go forward on the 20th and 21st. We could start it and then continue it. There's a lot of different options that can happen. But if the resentencing hasn't been completed by the time that his risk assessment has, then the judge will have the opportunity to look at that. But, you know, the judge may not need that. The judge may hear evidence before then, have a hearing before then, and decide that he can make his decision without that. But it's a great tool to have. Obviously, all of us that support the brothers know that it is going to be a great report. And, it's wonderful that the governor has stepped in to do that, because the DA's office obviously has no interest in looking at the rehabilitation. So
let me ask you this. I'm 10 seconds over, but I have got to find out from you. The DA said yesterday, all the boys need to do is apologize and admit to these 16 lies. They called them 16 lies. Is that something that Erik and Lyle Menendez might consider doing?
He is a control freak. Sorry, but he is not interested in rehabilitation. He is not interested in that, because those are lies. Those are not truths.
Oh, no. Oh, no, we just lost Alexandra. We just lost you right in the middle of what you said, and I'm over. But I'm taking that your answer is no. They will not admit to what he's asking them to admit to?
I'm not even responding to that, because it's not a real thing. It's not a real thing at all. He is being a control freak. He's saying explosive things on camera so that you and other people, no slight to you, but so that it will be repeated on camera, and that he's getting more face time because of it. But it's not a real thing. He's talking about things from the first trial where they weren't even convicted, and where they were exposed and they were cross-examined, and they did come out and admit that they were lying about those things. Those are all issues that have been dealt with, and the jury in the first trial rejected the prosecution's theory, and he's being a hypocrite.
Okay.
Because if they were victims, then he would be saying that, of course, victims of sexual violence don't tell the truth the first time because they're traumatized.
All right, we have some breaking news. Just within the last hour, convicted double murderers Erik and Lyle Menendez are now one step closer to freedom. A judge in LA has just announced he will allow the brothers' resentencing petition to move forward, which means they'll both have a full hearing in just under a week, next Thursday. Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman had opposed this. He joins me now. I just got to get your reaction, DA Hochman, to the judge's ruling.
So the fact that the Menendez brothers will have a resentencing hearing is not unexpected. In fact, there was two paths to get there. One, the court had initiated its own motion for a resentencing hearing, and the second was the prior DA had initiated his own motion. We took issue with the prior DA's motion because it had no analysis of the Menendez brothers' failure to completely accept responsibility for all the lies they have told over the past 30 years, including the lies of self-defense, the lies of trying to characterize their father as a violent rapist, their mother as a poisoner of the family, and the lie that they were trying to get a handgun the day before the murders. The judge basically said that he would not allow us to withdraw our motion, so there are effectively now two paths to the resentencing hearing. So we fully expected there to be a resentencing hearing. We're going to be prepared to argue that the Menendez brothers' request is not ripe. It's actually premature because they have failed to unequivocally and sincerely admit all the wrongdoing that they've been engaged in. And we'll see what the judge has to say at the end of that resentencing hearing.
And is the same judge going to be holding this hearing next Thursday?
The same judge will be holding the hearing, but the standards will be different. It's not whether or not there should be a resentencing hearing, but at the resentencing hearing itself, does the Menendez brothers, or do the Menendez brothers meet the standard to not only show rehabilitation, but to also show they don't pose an unreasonable risk of danger to society, and then try to get their sentence of life without the possibility of parole reduced to a life with the possibility of parole.
All right, they continue. You say they have to admit they lied about being abused as children by their father, but they continue to maintain that they were sexually abused by their father, and that's why they killed them.
So you have actually got it completely wrong.
Oh,
okay. The central defense was not sexual abuse at the trial. In fact, the Menendez brothers, we actually showed in court today, the Menendez brothers each testifying at the trial that sexual abuse was not the reason that they killed their father. They killed their father and their mother because they believed that their father and their mother was going to murder them the night of August 20th, 1989, and they basically shot them before their parents killed them.
Right, but I think I'm sorry, I wasn't clear in my question. I'm not talking about what they said at trial, although that's probably what's important in the resentencing hearing. I'm talking about what they've said since then, and their family has said since then. Their family, which are also the victim's family in this case, obviously, have argued that they were victimized sexually by their father for all of those years. So, but my question to you is, you just said you need them in order to support this. They need to admit that they lied about the sexual abuse. They have not said
that. Let me stop you there.
Okay.
It's such an important point. Our position was not that they lied about the sexual abuse. Our position was they lied about the self-defense, the idea that they were in actual fear of imminent harm from their parents that night. We showed that they had a pre-planned alibi ready to go.
Right.
That they had bought shotguns 2 days before. And they talked about killing their parents a week before, having nothing to do with self-defense. And then when they actually spoke to their own psychiatrist, and it was taped after the killings, at no point do they bring up self-defense. So we're saying that the self-defense defense is the lie, not the sexual abuse, but the self-defense defense, and all the suborning and attempting to suborn perjury. When they asked all their friends to basically have a variety of lies on their behalf, and none of the self-defense lies and none of the suborning perjury or attempting to suborn perjury lies have been acknowledged by the Menendezes in the last 30 years. And we're saying until they come clean, fully clean, with the full breadth of their lies, deceit, and their denials, they are not in a position to be trusted, to be fully rehabilitated, and continue to pose a risk to society of public safety.
Just because there was no hearing today doesn't mean that the Menendez family wasn't heard. They came anyway, and they marched on the DA's office building, giving him a piece of their mind. That DA, Nathan Hochman, says the brothers should serve every day of life without parole, unless and until they come clean on what the DA says are 16 lies. Hochman doesn't hold all the cards, though. California's governor says that Lyle and Eric will have parole board hearings in June and that clemency remains a possibility. Among the people speaking at today's pro-Menendez rally was Michael Mendoza, who for a time was incarcerated with Lyle Menendez, where the two of them became friends. And Michael Mendoza is kind enough to join me now live. Michael, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate this. I'm so fascinated by the life that Erik and Lyle have led behind bars. We read the reports, and the reports are glowing, that they've done all the right things, they've barely been in trouble, and that they've done things above and beyond what pretty much most inmate would ever do. But I haven't had a chance to speak to somebody who's actually served. So I would love to hear your recollections of your time with Lyle.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. Well, let me just quickly describe that. My interaction was brief in months. This was in 1999 when I was just 17 years old. And unfortunately, I had found myself within the criminal justice system at a time when they weren't separating kids from adults. And so at this moment, I was scared for my life, being on the prison yard with other adults and, being fortunate enough to run into Lyle on the prison yard when he, looked at me and said, "You look very young. You look way too young to be here. What are you doing here?" And it was a moment where I realized somebody was really concerned about me, and that made me feel safe. And so having Lyle for a very few months as a mentor meant a lot. It went a long ways for me. It really showed me in terms of where you should be focused on. That's rehabilitation. And that's what I saw from him. So it was really, really a pivotal moment for me to meet somebody who was on that same path as an example for the kind of path I was supposed to be on as well.
Yeah, well, listen, you really turned your life around. You're now, after serving 17 years, you're working within organizations to try to, make the criminal justice system better and make things better for those who've served when they get out. Do you think that your meeting with Lyle at such a young age may have started you on that track? Because I think that would be something they would want to highlight. Like, look, I meet people like Mike Mendoza, and I changed their lives in prison.
I think that's an important point and factor in my life that led me to success of many others. But we at Latino Justice, a civil rights organization, are in strong support of this rally because we believe in ending extreme sentences. And what I'm really grateful for is not just that Erik and Lyle have been doing a tremendous job taking advantage of rehabilitation, but they have their family who are strong supporters and a huge support system that are helping them and urging them and keeping hope alive for them to come home. And those are very, very important factors. And so for us as a civil rights organization, we believe that no one should begin a life without parole sentence. It's extremely inhumane. It does not do anything for people in prison. I was around people who were serving life without parole, and it could be a very hopeless environment, one that most people don't make it from. And so getting rid of that sentence, giving people hope, is what public safety is really about. Redemption does lead to public safety, and they're a really great example of that.
I only have a couple seconds left, Michael, but what do you say to the folks who say, look, life without parole is life without parole. If you shoot your parents like this, the law is the law. That's what Nathan Hochman was elected on. What do you say to those people?
I think that kind of law has not worked in our history. We have a system of mass incarceration. Victims do not receive healing. And it's time to take a new approach, and that's one of moral value. We, as a country, we should not be living in terms of an eye for an eye, but we should be living based on the principles of redemption, hope, mercy, and forgiveness. That's the kind of country in America that we want to live in. And I think that's what we're talking about here at this moment.
Well, you're a great example of it, that's for sure. You walk the walk and you talk the talk. Michael Mendoza, thanks so much for doing this tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashley.